I love every conversation that I have here, but there are some conversations that are a little bit more fun to have. And that's the case with today's guest, Dan Storey. Dan is a natural bodybuilding champion, a best-selling author, a speaker, and an amazing storyteller. In today's episode, Dan talked about how to get unstuck from a comfortable life. Comfortable life can be one of the worst traps to get stuck into because it seems like you have everything, so you don't want to grow anymore. In this conversation, he shares the exact mindset shift and mental toughness strategies that help him redefine success for himself. And if you also are living this very comfortable life, almost seems like you don't want to achieve anything anymore, this episode is for you because there is a version of yourself that you have not uncovered yet. So stay tuned. Then, as we were chatting before I hit recording, I wish I hit recording sooner because you mentioned some stuff that was very inspirational. But I mentioned that I was digging deep into your stuff and your website and your Instagram and your books. And I saw this on one of your posts and I was like, oh my God, this is like a short formula of achieving everything. And I'm going to read this part of it and then let's uncover this. So you said on one of your posts that physical results are a reflection of mental shift I took myself through starting with getting clear on my goals and motivation, getting comfortable with the level of commitment and discipline that was going to be required, and finally applying that motivation and etc. Like, this is the part that I wanted to talk about. I was like, yes, first there's the mental shift that you take. Then you're going to getting clear on your goals and your motivation. Then you have to get comfortable with like the commitment and the discipline. And then you have to apply that motivation. And because you said your latest book, can you show us the book?
This is the one that's out this year, which, as you mentioned, I need to update the title. But
Personal Transformation Blueprint, and one of the first chapters is like why transform.
Yeah.
And then this is kind of like the answer, obviously short answer, that the formula that I found on your post. But let's uncover this. First, let's start talking about why should you transform? Before we talk about transformation, is transformation for everyone? Should everyone transform their own lives? And what do you mean by transforming? And then let's uncover that little your formula.
So I have a belief, and that is that we should experience as much of life as possible. I think that's the biggest thing. And I think we start off like that. Like, I've got a little daughter, she's 4.5 years old, she's almost 5, and she does everything she possibly can, tests every boundary, just goes and plays like crazy and has no fear, like literally no fear. And over the years, we develop fears, we develop sensibilities, we adopt to the real world, and we stop dreaming. And I think we get what I call stuck in this trap of average, where things are okay. Like, things aren't bad. Like, you ask, does everyone need a transformation? No, not everyone needs a transformation. For many people, things are okay. Yeah. But I'd say okay is not necessarily good enough. If we're living at a 7 out of 10, an 8 out of 10, that's not too bad. There's no reason to go and throw the entire world out, the window. But could you achieve more? Could not achieve more, but could you experience more? Could you test your own limits? How much of kind of external pressure and internal just limited thinking is stopping you from exploring more? And that's what I found. I found that I was talking a lot of good stuff, and I was in teaching and training in business, and I was encouraging other people to do it. And then when I caught a glimpse of a photo and I saw myself, and I'm like, well, you're not putting any of this into practice, Dan. You talk a good game, but do you actually want to live this, or do you just want to talk about it? And it's funny, I just saw one photo, immediately ran out of excuses and said, you know what? Yeah, I have got stuck. I have got contained within a bubble. Let's see if we can bust out of this bubble. Let's see what more there is to experience in life. It wasn't that everything was terrible, far from it. And in fact, what I talk about is if things are bad, we look at rags to riches stories, we look at people with nothing who come up. Of course, they've got motivation. They've got all the motivation. Where can they go? They're at rock bottom. But what about little old me, little old average me? I've got a okay job. I've got a roof over my head. I've got a family that love and support me. Do I want to throw this one out? So it's not about that. It's not about torching your entire world and burning the bridges. It's about saying, okay, well, what more have I got inside me, and how can I express it?
I think it's a Malcolm X quote: what you don't hate, you will eventually tolerate.
Yeah.
And this is such an important issue that you are raising, that yes, there's extreme poverty, but there are people who have a comfortable lives and they got too comfortable. And how do you, that person, motivate themselves? to then explore more of themselves, more of what they can achieve, unlock their own creativity. So do you think, as you mentioned in your post, is the mental shift, does that come first? Is it what is first? Does awareness come first, or is it's a mental shift that you do? What's the first step?
You've got to get comfortable with opposing feelings at the same time. This is what has to happen. We're very good at talking ourselves out of our terrible situation. Like I look in the mirror, let's say I'm overweight. Let's just call it what it is. I'm overweight. I look in the mirror and I'm like, I'm overweight. And then immediately your brain goes, yeah, I know, but you're not as fat as Dave. Remember Dave? Oh my goodness. So we immediately compare ourselves. Sorry, Dave. But we immediately compare ourselves to something that makes us feel a little bit better. And because we feel better, we take the pressure, right? We're like, I don't need to change yet. It's okay. Once I get to Dave's state, then maybe I'll do something about it. And we kind of move the goalpost by just simply comparing ourselves to something else. You've checked out my social media. I'm not very good at it because I don't want to spend all my time there, but social media is the opposite of that, right? It makes us feel worse. And so we look at something online and maybe it's inspirational, maybe it's, I did this at the start of my bodybuilding, as I look at someone with a physique that I admire, but then I talk myself out of it. And then I say, well, I'm never going to be able to get there. And maybe I feel a little jealousy or a little anxiety or a little envy or some kind of negative feeling that is not aimed at that person, but aimed at myself. And so we've got to have two opposing feelings at the same time. The first one that drives change is dissatisfaction. Is I'm not happy. I've got to look in a mirror, metaphorical or not, and say, I'm not actually satisfied with where I am. I've got more to give. I know I've got more to give. And I'm scared, right? And that's the admission, right? Is we hold ourselves back, we're comfortable, whatever it is. The second one is we have to not get angry about it and be grateful for the situation that we're in. Now, it's really easy to look at someone who's got something that we want and get angry. Well, they had all of these things. They've got all of these things. Terrible. Screw them. I'm going to do this and I'm going to show you. And how many people do you know who are so angry that they don't have the things they have, that they have no way to channel that anger? And they just burn themselves up and they go into kind of depression or some kind of funk, but they never harness that energy to do something positive with it. So the other side then is gratitude and appreciation. Sounds a bit fluffy, but what that does, it says, okay, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I've had some amazing life experiences that brought me to who I am today that are unique. There's only one person who can go and live the path that I can live, and that is me with my experiences and everything brought me to here today. So it's those two aspects without them cancelling each other out, and to go, oh, that's nice. We've got to be able to hold both feelings, dissatisfaction and appreciation, and then use that initially to say, okay, I'm going to take a step forward and I'm going to go in that direction there. It's kind of having an idea where we want to go. We don't know what the end point is, but we know the direction.
It's so hard at those moments to trust the process. Today, I have so much evidence that every time I left my comfort zone, how amazing it turned out. But the first change that I ever had in my life was when I gave birth. I gained 58 pounds. I hated myself because, for me, how I look is the top priority. Yep. Health, obviously, but then how I look, even before my son, because if I don't feel my best, I'm not the best mother. So I have to take care of my needs, and many people will not understand this. If I'm not happy, he's not happy. Yeah. You are a parent, if you don't take the best care of yourself, and I don't mean if my son is hungry, I would just go and do
I'm gonna
myself.
have a sandwich, you can wait. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, but I don't mean that. But it's so important. So I hated my body, and then it was so hard for me to imagine myself fit. But then I hated it so much that I started to train, and then rest is the history. But if someone is listening to us and they have no history of them ever transforming anything in their own lives, how can they believe it first before they see the results?
You can't. There's no way. And this is...
And how do you find the motivation?
This is part of the fun. There's no such thing as motivation. So let's talk about that. So you choose a direction. You choose a direction. Okay, so the first thing, we get uncomfortable. And you can use words like hate. I love the word. It's got so much energy as long as it doesn't burn you up. But you can say, I hate my body, but I'm so grateful for the family that I've been able to have. Like, and it's that balance. And what you were saying is,
For me, that wasn't like hate. I literally hated every moment of my existence with my huge belly and with everything. And I was like, I cannot look at it. I wish I was like, oh my God, you poor thing, you just gave birth. Let me transform you. But no, that wasn't my
but there would have been
case.
something that you were attached to that was on the other side of that gap. So here's the chat. And you mentioned it, is you have so many points of reference for who you are. Like, I'm 45 years old now. As an individual, I have 45 years of experience that all says this is the person you are. Like, you're good at this person. This is your comfort zone. These are the things you can do. These are the skills you have. These are the friends you have. All of this stuff. A certainty. There's certainty there. The second I say I want to do something different, there's uncertainty. Right. And so there's a gap. There's a gap. And, I call it imposter syndrome or fraud state or something like that, as you feel that you're not that person. So I remember the first time I told people I was a bodybuilder. I'd never done a bodybuilding show. I'm like, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. And they're like, yeah, go on, Dan. Like, you're the same guy as we saw yesterday. I'm like, no. And this is that mental shift. I've got to say, right, I'm going to go and do that. Now, is there a plan in place? Yeah. I mean, to do anything, to be an author, to be a gardener, to start a business, there's a plan. You can follow a plan. So get a plan first. But understand that on day one of that plan, you're going to wake up and you're going to feel with two feelings. One is excitement and motivation. Finally living my path. The second one is dread and terror of like, oh my God, what if it goes wrong? And so we have these two opposing feelings. And then day two, guess what happens? The motivation's gone down a little bit. You still have the dread and terror. And then day three, there's zero motivation. You have the dread and terror. And the question is, what do you do on that day? The question is, what do you do on that day? And the answer is, you do the same as you did the day before, same as you did the day before that, and the same as you did before that. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. It's about showing up. Now, here's my new shift, right? So you mentioned I got 2 books. The second one is yet to come out. Right? So I'm writing. My shift is as an author. I have to call myself an author before I can be an author. I have a plan. I know what the path looks like. But every day I wake up and I'm like, Dan, you're not an author. Come on, man. You wrote 1 book and it was okay. And some people liked it, but you got a long way to go before you can call yourself an author. If I allowed motivation or lack of to kick in, then I wouldn't write. I would sit here and procrastinate, which I still do. But eventually I kick myself into gear and say, right, let's get on it. And I do the work. Some days I have good days. Like, I write. It's all good. Sometimes I have terrible days. I stare at the screen and I'm like, what am I going to do? Some days are just meh. And I'm like, okay, I typed some stuff out and some of it was okay. Some of it was good. We all know that the work comes in the edit, but I showed up. And this is the thing. Over time, that adds up. And that eventually gives you certainty that you are this new identity. And so the goal, step 1, is feel that comfort, discomfort, uncomfort, like those two opposing thoughts. Step 1 is have a dream, have an idea, have a principle, concept that is realistic if you follow a path, right? The path length is mostly the unrealistic thing. The path is usually okay. And then the next piece is show up and do the work. Show up and do the work, whether you feel like it or not. And here's what most people do. And let's take fitness. Fitness is a really easy one. In January, I'd gone through my off season of training as a bodybuilder, and I was about 85 kilos, which is maybe 13 kilos. So that's 30 pounds more than I'm on stage. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, Dan, you've eaten too much. You've gone too far. That was my internal voice going, nah, there's no way you're going to be ready for the show. And then I looked at my plan. I said, I've got 16 weeks. Like, what's the problem? And I gave myself 16 weeks to do what most people will give themselves 1 workout to do. That person in the gym who's like, I'm going to solve my body today. And they go so intense and then they burn out and they don't go. Consistency beats intensity all day, every day. Consistency beats intensity. And so show up, do the work, put the effort in, and follow the plan. Like, the only thing that you need to do is move the end date if you need to. So as an author, I haven't given myself an end date, but I know the process. I know what I need to contribute every single day. As a fitness competitor, I know I've got 16 sleeps. I have a very firm end date and I have a very firm end point, and I have the path that's in place. Like, that's unnegotiable. That's all done. So the only thing that needs to be worried about is if you have a plan that's going to get you to the point, is how long are you going to give yourself to do it? And most people don't give themselves enough time, and they think things happen faster than they do.
So, as I hear you said, like people expect things to change sooner than it is going to change or it needs to change. So, because they have like high expectations and our body doesn't change in a week. I remember like I was training and this girl came in and she was like, "Can I have like a big bath in 2 weeks?" She's asking my coach, like we laughed, but then I was telling my coach like when I started training thought I would have results in 2 weeks too. That's not that, like that's a lack of an understanding, lack of the knowledge. It was funny in a cute way, but then I realized how I was that girl who came, and then sometimes my mom says like, "Oh, like I don't want to train and like have big muscles." I'm like, "Mom, look at me, how hard I'm
I know,
trying
right?
to build my muscles and grow my muscles. Do I look like a bodybuilder? No." And then she was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." So like the lack of knowledge, and then the expectations that is higher than it should be is so important to like lower our expectations. But also like
one thing I would say to that is how much do you value the thing? Because if you value it enough to put 2 weeks into it, it's not that important. It's like a microwave meal, right? It's like, I'm going to put zero effort in, but I want all the gains. That's not something that's important to you. Like, you can try, you can play, you can pretend, but you're not dealing with the real issue. For you, and you use the word, "I hated my body," it's because there's a core value. You're not you unless you are living true to your physical self.
yeah.
And that means you're not going to put in 2 weeks. That's a lifestyle. That's everything. That's a look at the food every day. That's to read the nutrition labels as you put stuff into the shopping trolley that people just don't do. They don't understand. They don't even want to understand because they're happy to put 2 weeks work in, look at their butt and go, "Oh, okay, that's fine," and then carry on and do something else that's superficial.
It's hard. Like sometimes like I'm not hungry, but I'm eating. And I'm like, I'm just sitting there. I'm like, people like they look at me and they're like, "Oh, you like great body," but I'm like, you don't know.
You don't know. And
like,
this is what people don't understand is there's no such thing as balance. There's only sacrifice. There's only sacrifice. And people try and have everything. And I've had this conversation so many times. And we ask the billionaires, "Do you have work-life balance?" They're like, "Yeah, I have an island and a yacht and a jet ski and I fly around the earth and I have like a rocket ship and all this kind of stuff." And you're like, "Yeah." Let me ask you another question. Did you have work-life balance during the grind, during the hustle, during all that time? And I love Richard Branson. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's achieved so many things and has that balance element that we see, at least from the outside. But when he was younger, he used to make business calls from a phone box. He used to live on a boat. He tried to dodge the tax man to make a little bit more money on deals because he couldn't afford to pay the tax, to create Virgin Records. And now there's a Virgin Records, I don't know if it's still there, but on Times Square. Like, come on. Don't ask the question now, ask about it during the grind. And that's where we have to sacrifice. And I always joke with this. I'm not talking about goats and virgins and throwing people into volcanoes. I'm saying strategic sacrifice, like a chess player. How do I sacrifice this chess piece, like a pawn, to get something more powerful? And you sacrifice by choosing to spend time and thought on what you eat and how you train and all those things, which means you can't do something else. So you're saying no to something else so that you can say a bigger yes to other things. And people aren't prepared to make that trade, I don't think. That's kind of one of the things. People want stuff now, they want it immediately. They're not prepared to sacrifice.
But also, I think the mental shift that you were talking about, like the other day I had a thought like, I feel like I'm spending all my time cooking and then it feels like I just ate and then and then I was like, you know what, like tell myself, spend that energy of simplifying your meal prepping method because clearly something isn't working. Then I realized maybe I can like prepare the banana pancakes and then put it in the mix and put it in the fridge, and in the morning it like cut my time like 15 minutes. And in the morning before school, that's a lot of time, 15 minutes.
We literally had that conversation this morning about breakfast for kids. Yeah.
Exactly. You have to spend that energy when you're like feeling like, "Oh, I cannot take this anymore. Maybe you can do something in a different way." Like many times you're bullshitting ourselves, and you can spend that energy on like finding this. That's what I tell my toddler. He's not a toddler anymore. He's 7. I'm like, more attention on solutions, not to the
Yeah.
problems.
It's interesting because you did the work first. You understood what banana pancakes are. You made them yourself. You know the ingredients. A lot of people just go, oh, look, banana pancakes. They'll go and buy it in the store and they'll take it down and say, oh, banana pancakes is healthy. Put it in a trolley and it's full of sugar and rubbish. I literally went to the store. I'm in New York now. So, of course, I have a Costco membership. And I love Costco. It's one of my favorite things to do as a British person.
Oh, like the free samples. The free samples
and
were my
literally,
favorite.
that's a day out for me and my daughter. It's like, let's go around and just eat all these things. They had some amazing protein. There was 2 protein bars next to each other, right? And both of them had big text, looked super fancy, said protein bar. If I haven't done the work, I'm gonna pick up one box and go, thank you very much, put it in. It's a protein bar. I'm gonna eat a protein bar. Protein bars are healthy. The difference in macros, one had 20 grams of protein and 20 grams of carbs and like 3 grams of fat. That is a good protein bar. The other one, immediately next to it, similar packaging, had 10 grams of protein, 15 grams of fat. This is a fat bar, not a protein bar that just called. If you haven't done the work, if you haven't kind of done the research, then you're just going to put it in and go, I'm being healthy, and you're being misled by marketers and stuff like that. That's not, like, you've got to work hard first. You've got to put the effort in and then think about working smart. Most people go straight to the shortcuts, and it's like, that's where you go things wrong.
That's a good point that you raised. Do you think it is a part of the plan where you talked about and then follow the plan, or it's the preparation for the plan, which comes first?
The plan comes first, and then you put the work
Okay.
in, and then you go, I'm being inefficient. How can I be more efficient, but follow the same plan? That's where the good questions come in. So like you, it's like, okay, well, why am I cooking 1 meal at a time when I can cook 5 meals at a time? Why am I making 1 batch of pancake mix when I could make a whole bunch and put it in the fridge? Yeah, it's that.
You can freeze them.
Yeah.
You can freeze so many
I know.
things. You can freeze French toast. Like, you can dip them. And I used to, like, when I had my son was little, I used to freeze them and then like do it in the
But
morning.
you'll do
I used
that.
to
You
mi-
won't go and buy frozen French toast, which has 1 billion grams of sugar added. That's the difference.
Yes, exactly.
It's a tiny difference.
Because I want to look good. So because this episode will be like really short, we cannot like talk about so many things, but I want to give people like the first step to transformation. With all of this is like kind of getting familiar to transformation. And we talked about the mental shift, and we talked about how to get comfortable with the commitment. But then, okay, I do it for a week. I'm doing for 2 weeks. 3rd week comes, 4th week comes. I have a plan. But then these negative thoughts come into my mind. I don't yet see the results. How do we keep going?
One of my favorite authors is Seth Godin. I love this man and everything he writes. I have a webinar open that he's just got a new book out, so that's going to be some of my stuff for today. Seth Godin goes against what most motivational speakers say. Most motivational speakers will say this. They'll say, what would you dare to do if you knew you could not fail? And we're all like, oh yeah, I'm motivated. I'm going to go and, parachute off the Empire State Building, or got to climb Everest on like a pogo stick, or some crazy stuff like that. Seth Godin goes, nah, that's wrong. Like, anybody can be brave in a fearless situation. The question is this: what would you dare to do if you knew you would fail, but you would do it anyway? What would you dare to do if you knew you would fail, but you would do it anyway? And this, for me, this is like writing. I make sense of the world through writing. I don't care if it's good. Like, I'm getting better and I'm studying and I'm working hard to perfect my craft, but I have to write. Like, there's a part of me that gets expressed through writing. I have to go to the gym and do fitness, because if I don't, I go completely crazy. There's things in my life that I have to do that, regardless of the outcome, I'm going to go and do them anyway. And this is what we need to find. This is who we are as individuals, is what are those things that you have to do, regardless of success metrics, any of those things that you have to, like your podcast here, you have to connect with people. Like, that's one of your callings. If you didn't connect with people, like whatever medium it is, it doesn't matter. But if you didn't do that, you'd be not expressing a part of yourself that has to be expressed. And you could have this conversation and we could have 1 like, or we could have 100,000 likes. And you know what? You're going to go and have another conversation. You're going to go and have another conversation, because it's not about the result. It's about the process. And this is what we've got to fall in love with, is fall in love with the process. Show up, do the work, find a way to make it fun. Forget what other people are looking from the outside. They're not even looking. This is what we think they're looking, but they're not. It's just us against us. Show up, do the work, do the stuff that really excites you and makes you feel like you're coming alive. because that's what we need to do for ourselves, for the world.
Yes, and when you change, literally everyone around you changes, and you have the energy shift. Whenever you achieve something, you are so afraid of losing
Yeah.
it that you get so attached to it. How do you get comfortable, and how do you enjoy it and be present throughout the process without attaching?
Non-attachment is a challenge. I studied Buddhism a long, long time ago. I know it's a major concept. And I think the way that we do it is, and my background, I study psychology. I look into business psychology. I apply it in business. And one of the things that I learned a couple of years ago, a friend of mine gave me a very interesting book, if you're into this kind of thing, is the difference between leading indicators and lagging indicators. This sounds boring already as it comes out of my mouth, but we'll go with it. So a lagging indicator is what we typically attach ourselves to. It's the result of the process. So for me, a lagging indicator would be body weight. Yeah, it's the end result of all the things I do. For you, for a podcaster, the lagging indicator is traffic or views or something like that. The question is not what the lagging indicator is. That's a useful metric. But if we change it to leading indicators, these are things we have direct control over. So what are the things that we can have direct control over? And you talked about there. It's like I can control my intensity. I can shrink time down on exercise or rest periods. I can ramp my intensity up. I can give myself a score out of 10 for the workout itself. I don't know what it's going to do, but I know I can do this. Yeah. For podcast is what can I do? I can prepare 5 questions in advance by researching someone. So my question quality is amazing. Regardless of the outcome, I know that I've done the best as an interviewer. As a writer, I know that I can control my output, like type. Yeah, if I want to go one bit forward, it's like I can do, how much time did I spend brainstorming and diarizing and thinking out loud before I then started writing? I'm not thinking about word quality or final print text. I'm not thinking about that. I'm purely thinking on the front end. That is where we have control. That is where we have power. This is going to happen. Right? The lagging indicators, they're going to change, but only because we changed the front end. And I think we get too much attached to that and we blame ourselves that doesn't go right. Okay, well, screw that. Forget that. Let's focus on what we can control and say, okay, well, here's the metric. So I think it's not about not having metrics. There's a concept called the Hawthorne effect that says what you measure improves, right? So we have to measure something. But I think we need to move the shift from the end of the process to in or before the process. If we measure those elements, then we can have a little fun with it.
Wow. That's a really good way to put it. Everything you're saying makes sense, and I can feel that you're not just talking about something you read or heard. You are talking through your experience. You have really thought this through, and you have lived this. You can always see the difference when people are talking. If they're telling you something they read or they're talking from their experience, obviously we read and we hear things, we get inspired and we repeat it and we make it our own. But then you applied it to your life and you are talking through the experience. And those conversations, for me personally, are the most interesting. And obviously, none of the, even if we had an hour, it wouldn't have been enough to cover the topic. But we literally, people got familiar about transformation. And it was the first step and how the transformation can look. And if they want to dive deeper into the topic, where can people find you? I'm going to link everything down in the show notes, but your book, and what are some ways that you bring value to people and how can they connect to you?
Perfect. So the book is on Amazon. It's called Personal Transformation Blueprint. It's this idea of a goldfish jumping from a little pond into a big pond. We're good. But if we want to change, if we want to explore more of what we can do, then come and find me on Amazon. The next book is going to be called Unstuck, which is principles of behavioral psychology and how our psychology has evolved to keep us stuck. So it's not our fault that we get stuck, but it is our responsibility if we want to get unstuck.
Right.
I'm going to be doing nothing but training for the next 2 weeks. I'm currently preparing for the Mr. Olympia competition, hence why I'm still in gym kit. Because, and like you said, you've got to put stuff into practice. We learn theory, but unless we act and we get outside of our comfort zone, we never fully understand what that theory means until we're in there and we're in the crucible. So for the next 2 weeks, I'm not going to be doing anything. After that, I'm going to be taking on some coaching clients and helping them with their own personal transformation journey. So come and check me out at danstorey.com and register your interest if you want to go through personal transformation, either before Christmas or the whole New Year's resolution, kick the new year into new you.
And podcast, your podcast.
And the podcast. I have some amazing conversations because, like you said, I have some ideas. I've done a lot of reading. I've spent time in the classroom. I kind of try and put myself into the world. I love to add color. Like I love to add different approaches and different perspectives. So I'm talking to stress management experts. I spoke yesterday to someone who'd lost a brother to murder and a son to suicide, because if you can't deal with your emotions, like, how are you going to go on with life? Like we can learn so much from other people. So yeah, as a podcaster, I love the conversation I have, and thank you so much for the insightful questions you've been asking today. But yeah, check out the Personal Transformation podcast as well, for some other interesting conversations on similar topics that will help you get unstuck and work on your own transformation journey.
Oh my God, you are competing. I cannot even imagine. I have competed, but for jiu-jitsu. And competing is a different type of beast. And there's it's not just you go to the gym and you train and you have a competition. I cannot even imagine competing for Mr. Olympia. Must be very energy and time consuming. So I hope everything will go better than you can even imagine or you hope for. And is there anything throughout this conversation that you wanted to mention, but I didn't get the chance to ask you the question?
You've done a phenomenal job. And I think people will take, as always, what they want to take from any situation. So hopefully the people who've been listening or watching have paid attention. What I would say is the biggest thing is that first step. It's about deciding to get unstuck. It's about understanding that our entire brain is wired to keep us stuck. Like our psychological evolution is to keep us in status quo, keep us safe, keep us out of trouble, and, just maintain existence. Maintaining existence is amazing if you're comfortable and you're happy with everything. But most people, the science says, are not entirely satisfied. Harness that dissatisfaction. Admit that it's okay not to have everything in life, and decide to go on a journey and challenge yourself. See what you can become. Because at the end of the day, and I heard this again the other day, we don't regret things we don't do. We don't regret the choices that we make. It's the ones that we don't decide to make that we always look back on.
Yeah, and it's a cliche saying, but life really starts at the end of your comfort zone. And then you have to color outside. I even have a tattoo that's just coloring outside of the lines to remind myself to, and take that step that seems uncomfortable. This is a question I ask everyone, and leave me and the listeners with a message. It can be a quote or a book or a movie that inspired you, even a sentence or a word. But what would be your last message for us?
I'm going to have to go with the first one that pops into my head. So my favorite movie of all time is Fight Club. And there's a scene in it was part of Project Mayhem, where Tyler Durden goes into a convenience store and grabs the clerk from behind the desk and pulls him out behind the alley of the convenience store, makes him kneel down and holds a gun to the back of his head. And he says, "Give me your wallet." And he pulls out his wallet and he says, Raymond K. Hessel. And this is his name. And he finds this library card. He says, community college card. He's like, "What were you studying, Raymond?" And Raymond's like, "Stuff." He's getting a shot. Oh, come on. Fair play to the guy. He's even getting words out. And he says, "I want to be a vet." That's effectively it. And Tyler Durden says, "I'm going to keep this card." I said, "I'm going to let you go now, but I'm going to come back in a month. And if you're not on your way to becoming a vet, then I'm going to do what we're going to do here." I can't remember the exact words. And he runs off in tears, right? And the other guy, Edward Norton, I'm not going to mention any storylines or anything that's going to spoil it. He goes, "What did you do? That's the worst thing you've ever done." And the line is this. He says, "Tomorrow will be the greatest day of Raymond K. Hessel's life. His breakfast will taste like no other meal that you or I have ever tasted before." It's like, holy, how, I'm getting goosebumps just saying it, but it's that idea.
I teared up and I got goosebumps too.
It's that idea that we need craziness like that to come and kick us in the butt to go and live our dreams, but we'll settle for working for minimum wage in a convenience store. It blows my mind, but that's where our psychology goes. And that's what world is about. The world is about playing safe, playing average, don't make a noise, you'll be okay. But life is not. Life is, you get one go, let's go and play. That's basically it.
you're an amazing storyteller. Did anyone ever told you that?
Not amazing.
Like,
I've
you are
worked
an
on it.
amazing storyteller.
I've worked on it.
What did you
I've
say?
worked on it. It's something that I believe Story, and it's not just because it's my second name, but Story has the power to change people's emotions, and that's where it all starts. So yeah, I try and lean into the emotional side a little bit more than I can.
Well, you already achieved it because like I was like tearing up. I was like, yes. And throughout the like it's like I believe you when you talk, and again because you have lived it. Thank you so much for just like doing so many things and trying so many um transforming yourself in many different ways and then sharing that stories with us because one thing is to transform one life and another is to touch so many other lives. And I appreciate you doing that.
Thanks, Annie. It's been a pleasure to be on the show.
And thank you so much for listeners. Have an amazing day or night wherever you are. And until next time.